Hey guys, my name is Lunar. Welcome to this character build video for Skyrim Special Edition. Before we start, it's my first video like this, so I have lots to talk about. If you want to skip ahead, then all the relevant timestamps for the video are in the description. Now you probably know me for making mod videos for Skyrim, but I also like to make loads of other types of video as well. It just happens that Skyrim mods are really popular at the minute, so I have lots of videos coming out for mods. However, over the last few weeks, me along with my sister, who is a huge fan of Skyrim like me, have been working on this video. Not as a new type of video to make instead of mod videos or anything like that, but simply a video we thought looked like a lot of fun to make, and in fact it was extremely fun to make. I know there are already other videos like this from various YouTubers, but like I said, we made this just for the fun of it. So even if you guys don't like it, it's a video I'm definitely going to be making more of in the future. So since it's our first attempt at this video, we kind of just went with the same style as those other guys who make them. We have our own build along with backstory, which is lore friendly of course. Then we go over the races, factions, beliefs and allegiances, if any. Then skills, perks, etc., weapons and armors. And since you guys are all here for the mods, a mod section telling you some of the best mods to go with this build, but it's not going to go into a lot of detail explaining the mods. We plan to make a different build each video focusing on different skill trees. Today's video is based around illusion, and also it will use a lot of sneaking skills as well, but illusion is the primary one. So what better type of way to play an illusion build than as a vampire? So let's get into our vampire character build that focuses on the illusion skill tree as his main perk, starting with a bit of backstory on our character, and then moving on to a bit of info on the character and his playstyle. Our vampire is an Altmer born in Morrowind who lived in Vardenfell in relative peace until the Blight. His life had been fairly dull until one day it all changed. This is a story of where our character's vampiric origin began, when in 3rd Era 417, upon the brink of starving to death, a chance encounter saved his life. In the 3rd Era 417, our hero found himself starving to death in Vardenfell, the largest island in Morrowind. As his situation turned desperate, he stole some gold that had been left conspicuously out in the open and fled. After eating like a king, our hero realized the owner of the gold had pursued him, and terrified, the elf fled into the night. However, he soon discovered he had become the victim of a con, one that had led him straight into a trap. The nest of a rather nasty coven of vampires. For several terrible years, our hero was kept alive as cattle for the vampires, descendants of the ancient Ante bloodline, famed for their skills in magic. He was fed upon daily and learned the greatest of life's lessons. There is something worse than being hungry. Being food. Growing unrest within Morrowind and the abhorrence towards the undead in general led to this vampire's captors being slaughtered by the two other major vampire clans in the 3rd Era 427. During the turmoil, our hero escaped with his life. However, having been fed upon daily for so long, it soon became apparent that our hero himself had contracted sanguinary vampiris. Unwilling to make any person suffer as he did, our hero fed on the blood of livestock to keep the vampirism from spreading. Desperately, he prayed to Arcade to cure him, but he was met with silence, and his pleas to the Daedric prince Molag Bal went similarly unanswered. Angrily, he renounced both the Divines and Daedra and fled the growing hostilities in Morrowind. Our hero travelled through several centuries, but was shunned because of his condition. He looked for a cure wherever he went, but no cure disease potion ever worked. He studied magic obsessively, but no spell he could ever conjure worked. Feeling disheartened, he eventually joined the Mages Guild in Cyrodiil, in the hope someone there could help him. In the year 3rd Era 433, the Oblivion Crisis swept across Tamriel, and the sentiment towards a barely tolerated vampire deteriorated once again. Despite his hatred for the Daedra and his willingness to use masterful illusion skills to help fight them, our hero was once again forced to flee. Having enjoyed the camaraderie of the Mages Guild, he moved to Skyrim and hoped to find some friends and answers among the College of Winterhold. Whilst initially accepted, many there grew distrust his contributions, especially within the School of Restoration, whose reputation remains tainted to this day, and once again he had to leave his home. Deciding to stay north where the sun's rays were weakest, he moved to the city of Windhelm due to its large elf population. While mostly being able to hide his low-level vampirism, it was here he encountered a great deal of prejudice and hatred for the native Nords. Wary of his race and proclivity for magic, and in response to growing concerns over murders within the city, our hero was run out of town by an armed and angry mob. Alone, penniless, and with nowhere else to go, our Altmer contemplated the worst. It was in a wayside inn, when he was starving half to death, that another chance encounter would change his destiny. The innkeeper told him about the Vigil of Stendarr, a group dedicated to destroying the Daedra and all the unclean creatures of Skyrim. Thinking they could perhaps save him, or do him the mercy of just killing him, he allowed the innkeeper to arrange a meeting of the town of Helgen, far to the south and away from the troubles of the war. Our elves travelled quickly, risking the main yet dangerous roads across the landscape. As Helgen approached, he was suddenly caught up in a skirmish between the Imperials and the Stormcloaks, and found himself arrested alongside the rebels for crimes against the Empire. Despite pleading his innocence, our unfortunate elf found himself with his neck on the chopping block. It wasn't the way he intended to go, but at this point he didn't much care. Fate was to save him again, this time in the form of a dragon, and that's where the story of our Altmer vampire begins. So now we know a little bit about the backstory of how our vampire came to be in Skyrim at the start of the game. But what kind of character is he? Well, the vampires of Skyrim, like their Cyrodiil cousins, are typically infected with the disease Sanguinaire Vampiris. With an incubated period of 3 days, the sufferer begins to undergo a series of physical and biological transformations that become permanent if the disease is not cured within the initial incubation phase. There are 4 stages of vampirism, each bringing with it a number of side effects, including weakness to fire and weakness to sunlight, which increasingly stunts the regeneration of health, magicka, and stamina. As the effects grow in severity, the player will also experience increased stigmatism and hostility from the citizens of Skyrim. Drinking blood does not reset the shortcomings to stage 1, but you might want to sheath your fangs as it's not all doom and gloom. Vampirism also endows the player with a dynamic frost resistance, immunity to disease and poison, increased sneak, and a 25% increase to illusion spells. There is a whole raft of vampire-specific main spells to play with, including the ability to reanimate the dead bodies, improve sight and drain health, magicka, and stamina from a target. With each stage a new ability is added, including Embrace of Shadows, which renders the player invisible for 180 seconds. That's going to come in very handy for our playstyle. Just a minor note before we go any further, there are a few variations of vampires within Skyrim, but for the purpose of today's vampire build, we're just sticking to a classic case of Sanguinaire Vampiris. Our vampire then is a skilled manipulator, using his boosted illusion skills to control and manipulate his enemies. Abilities such as invisibility, frenzy, and pacify allow the knowing vampire to stay away from danger, whilst targets kill each other and do all the hard work. To aid this unhanded tactic, vampires are masters of subterfuge, and employ their enhanced sneak to work safely from the shadows. As you can see, the cunning vampire is a great choice for those who enjoy staying out of the fray, and hey, what's a little blood draining between friends? So now we know a bit about our vampire's backstory, and a little bit about exactly what vampires are. So what about our vampire's allies and enemies? Well, as a vampire, you're probably not going to have many friends and allies. The only real place you can fit in without judgment is the Dark Brotherhood. For gaining skills and allegiances, the College of Winterhold and the Thieves Guild are also both perfect for you, helping you master your sneak and magic abilities. The companion should probably be avoided though, but then again you are a master of manipulation, so you might be able to bluff your way through the questline. For companions and followers, being a vampire is a challenge to find a good companion. Along with playing a sneak character, it's probably easier to stealth alone, so we didn't choose a companion for this build. For a player home, you're a vampire, so cities can be dangerous. It's probably best just to build your own favourite Hearthfire home and live there, or find a place out of the way to squat. Next, we can look at our vampire's build, taking a look at skills, spells, and perks. But first off, we have to know exactly what way we want to play. As a vampire, we want to play the following way: using sneak attacks as much as possible, using our illusion spells to help muffle and keep hidden and invisible. If you're caught, you can use your illusion spells to calm the enemy to escape, or frenzy to distract enemies, giving you time to conjure, and then use your destruction magic or one-handed weapon to kill the enemies that remain. The conjuration will help absorb damage you might receive. After all, you are quite vulnerable. If you can though, you want to avoid confrontation at all times. So here's a breakdown of everything you need to know for our illusion special vampire build. For race, our vampire is an Altmer. While Dunmers look probably more the part of a vampire and have a resistance to fire, which can be very handy for a vampire, the Altmer's special ability of Fortified Magic is just too good to pass up, increasing even more when you unlock the Vampire Necromage perk. As a magic build, this is a huge benefit. Whenever we level up, we want to distribute our points as follows. Since our main focus of this entire build is illusion, that means in order to get the most out of our character, he needs to have plenty of magicka. So for every 3 points you get, you should distribute 2 points for magicka for every point you add to health. Stamina for a vampire and magic based character in general really isn't that necessary. Additional skills and powers can be gained from standing stones and shrines as well. For a standing stone, we went with the Mage Stone, where we learn all magic skills 20% faster. If you find you're struggling to stay alive with this build, then switch to the Large Stone to increase armor and magic damage resistance for your character for a while until you're strong enough. Visiting the Shrine of Akatosh whenever possible is also handy, as it gives you 10% faster magicka regeneration for 8 hours. Alright, so let's jump into our character's main perks for around the first 50 levels. As you know, our main perk focuses around the illusion tree. For perks, you want to begin with focusing on the right hand side of the tree and the center. All of these are aimed at getting your illusion spells to fool higher level enemies and aiming to improve the fear, calming, and frenzy spells. so that they work on higher level enemies as well. As we are trying to remain silent and sneak a lot, the quiet casting perk is also very handy. Our second most important skill tree is Sneak, and we should try to unlock all of these by around level 50. There are 9 different abilities, so it shouldn't take as long as some of the other skill trees. And remember only to put 1 point into the first perk, so don't do it all the way up to 5 until you finish the rest of the tree. But you should try and focus on unlocking all of the sneak skills as quick as possible. Next is Destruction Magic. If we run into trouble and are forced to fight, the Destruction Magic is your best line of attack. As we have relatively low damage resistance, we want to avoid really close quarter combat. So unlocking destruction spells like Dual Wield and half magicka cost, as you need every bit of magicka you can. To go with this, free spells is probably the best thing for you. This will give you the ability to damage your enemy, but the main thing, it will slow down your enemy's movements, making them much easier to avoid when they attack you at close range. Our next most important skill is One-Handed. While we avoid close quarter combat while in battle, when sneaking we want to kill our enemies in one strike with a dagger preferably, so unlocking any perk that increases damage or power attacks is a must. Pump the Armsman skill all the way to max, as this is the way you should be killing most enemies in the game. Our 2 final skills are there for when times get tough, or when you're forced to fight a tough boss and sneaking isn't really an option. Restoration, which is self-explanatory, improving healing and the cost of healing to half magicka, anything really except unlocking the better restoration spells is useful from this tree. Finally, Conjuration. The best way to prevent damage and death is to have someone or something absorb some of the damage. You want to work towards getting the Twin Conjuration perk mostly, so you can have 2 summons protecting you at all times whenever you're not sneaking. It can be extremely handy. They also do attack damage as well. Other than this, you can spend your points on some of these skill trees, Speech, Lockpick, and Pickpocket, since you're a master at sneaking. But the trees we have covered should be your main priority. Light Armor, Alchemy, Alteration, and any of the other warrior-based skills are not really necessary for your character. Enchanting can be useful, but not until you get the final set of weapons and armor that you plan to use. Otherwise, just rely on equipment that has enchantments already on them. So now we know a lot more about our character, so what kind of weapons and armors and accessories do we want for him? Well, for armors and weapons, it's not so important what you choose to begin with. Just use the best looking light armor and the strongest dagger you can find. Eventually you can get something like the Master Vampire armor from the Dawnguard DLC, or the Nightingale armor. You can also try to work towards finding a Daedric dagger. Your smithing won't be high enough though to craft one yet. It's the enchantments however that are more important for our character's build. A mixture of magicka regeneration is a must, and then a mix of Fortify Illusion, magicka, stamina and health regeneration, along with improved sneak, and of course you can add some magic resistance if you want to, mostly for fire. Well, we have finally reached the end of our Illusion Vampire character build. However, we're not done there. The build is pretty good so far and anyone can have fun trying it out, but if you want to take your character a step further, especially the vampire aspect, then I have some really awesome mods that are going to go perfectly with this build, to make it just a bit more diverse and immersive for you in game. You can decide to install some of them or all of them, it's up to you. So let's take a look. Our first mod is Sneak Tools. As our primary method of killing for the build is sneak attacking, that's going to get old fast, and it's limited in what you can do as well. The Sneak Tools allows you to slit your enemies' throats, light and extinguish fires, set traps, and knock out enemies instead of killing them. That's going to make feeding much easier and safer when a vampire. Next up we recommend Balanced New Spells. It adds in some new magic spells to all magic skill trees, but they are not overpowered and fit in seamlessly to vanilla Skyrim. They add a much needed expert level beauty spell. Your character becomes more attractive to those around him or her, increasing barter, persuasion, and pickpocket abilities for 60 seconds. Perfect for a vampire. On top of this we have 3 vampire related perks. We're not going to go over them in much detail, but they are Sacrosanct Vampires of Skyrim. This overhauls vampires, adding new skills, perks, abilities, and items to make vampires and vampire lords especially more dynamic, by increasing the amount of perks on the skilled perk tree for vampire lords. Better Vampires, which does similar things, but focuses far more heavily on vampire gameplay, such as adding vampirism stages, deciding how much you do or don't feed on victims, and also makes changes to the amount of blood you drink, which in turn alters your skills, stats, abilities, and notoriety, making playing a vampire far more dynamic, with much more choices on how you play. And finally, a Vampire Sun Damage Clothing mod. Reduces sun damage while clothed as a vampire, makes vampirism more realistic. There are obviously loads of different mods you can download, but we went with mods that only alter your gameplay, and these 5 we felt altered the gameplay just enough to improve the build without breaking immersion and making you overpowered. Well guys, there we have it, our very first Skyrim character build video. My sister and I had so much fun making this, and we went into quite a lot of detail as well, covering pretty much everything, but that might change based on your guys' feedback. So I'm really excited to hear what you guys have to say in the comments below. Next time we will be working on another character build based around another skill tree. So we have 17 left to choose from, and it's up to you guys, so whatever skills get mentioned in the comments most will be our next build. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment and subscribe, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you all next time for more Skyrim Special Edition videos. See you all then.